John Christie was a man who was always destined to be a criminal. After being discharged from the Royal Air Force in 1924, he was in and out of prison for the next decade. In 1934, him and his wife moved into the now famous 10 Rillington Place. Over a period of 10 years, 10 women would fall victim to his murderous rampage. The ineptitude of the police and the execution of an innocent man allowed Christie to avoid capture for so long. This is the story of the Monster of Rillington Place. John Christie was born April 8, 1899 in Northam near Halifax in the West Riding of Yorkshire, the sixth of 7 children. He had a troubled relationship with his father, carpet designer Ernest John Christie, a strict and stoic man who displayed little emotion towards his children and would punish them for little offenses. John was also alternately coddled and bullied by his mother and older sisters. On March 24, 1911, Christie's grandfather, David Holliday, died aged 75 in Christie's house after a long battle with an illness. Christie later said that seeing his grandfather's body laid out on a trestle table gave him a feeling of power and well-being. A man he had once feared was now only a corpse. At the age of 11, Christie won a scholarship to Halifax Secondary School, where his favorite subject was math, particularly algebra. He was also good at history and woodwork. It was later found out that Christie had an IQ of 128. He also attended Boothtown Council School in Northam. He sang in a church choir and was a Boy Scout. During his later life, Christie's childhood peers described him as a queer lad who kept to himself and was not very popular. His problem with impotence began in adolescence. His first attempts at sex were failures. He was branded Reggie No Dick and can't do it Christie. And can't do it Christie by his peers. Oh my God. His sexual difficulties were lifelong. Most of the time he could only perform with prostitutes. In September 1916, during World War I, he enlisted in the British Army. He was called up on April 12, 1917 to join the 52nd Nottinghamshire and Derbyshire Regiment to serve as an infantryman. In April 1918, the regiment was dispatched to France, where Christie was seconded to the Duke of Wellington's regiment as a signalman. During the following June, he was injured in a mustard gas attack and spent a month in a military hospital in Calais. He later claimed this attack had rendered him blind and mute for 3.5 years and permanently impacted his ability to speak loudly. Scottish journalist Ludovic Kennedy wrote that no record of Christie's blindness had been traced, and that while he might have lost his voice when he was admitted to hospital, he would not have been discharged as fit for duty had he remained a mute. His inability to talk loudly, Kennedy argued, was a psychological reaction to the gassing rather than a lasting toxic effect of the gas. The reaction and Christie's exaggeration of the effects of the attack stemmed from an underlying personality disorder that caused him to exaggerate or feign illness as a ploy to get attention and sympathy. He was demobilized from the Army on October 22, 1919, and he joined the Royal Air Force on December 13, 1923, but was discharged the next August. Christie married Ethel Simpson from Bradford at Halifax's Town Register office on May 10, 1920. His impotence remained, and he continued to visit prostitutes. After 4 years of marriage, the couple separated. Ethel worked at the Garside Engineering Company on Ironbridge Road in Bradford, and then later worked at the English Electrical Company on Thornton Road, also in Bradford, until 1928. That year, Ethel and her siblings moved to Sheffield. In 1923, Christie moved to London. He spent the next decade in and out of prison while Ethel remained in Yorkshire with her relatives. During the first decade of his marriage to Ethel, Christie was convicted of several criminal offenses. He began working as a postman on January 10, 1921 in Halifax, and his first conviction was for stealing postal orders on February 20th and March 26th, for which he received 3 months prison. He served a sentence at HM Prison, Manchester, and was released on June 27th. Christie was then convicted on January 15th of obtaining money on false pretenses and of violent conduct, for which he was arrested and placed on probation for 12 months. He committed 2 further crimes of larceny during 1924 and received consecutive sentences of 3 to 6 months imprisonment. On May 13th, 1929, after working for over 2 years as a truck driver, Christie was convicted of assaulting Maud Cole with whom he was living with at 6 Almeric Road in Battersea, and was sentenced to 6 months hard labor. He had hit Cole over the head with a cricket bat, for which he was sent again to ancient prison Wandsworth. Finally, Christie was convicted of auto theft and re-imprisoned at Wandsworth again for 3 months. Christie and Ethel reconciled in 1934 after he was released from prison, but he continued to visit prostitutes. He ended his recourse with petty crime in 1937, when they moved into the top floor of 10 Rillington Place in Notting Hill, then rather a run-down area of London. They later moved to the ground floor flat in December 1938. The house was a 3-story brick and terrace built in the 1870s during a period of intensive speculative building in the area, resulting in much jerry-built property which declined into poorly maintained and unimproved multi-occupancy rentals. Number 10 was of a common design. The ground and first floors each contained a bedroom and a living room, with a kitchen in the adjacent extension, but the second floor flat had 2 rooms only, a kitchen/living room and a bedroom. Living conditions were squalid. The building's occupants shared one outside lavatory, and none of the flats had a bathroom. The street was close to an above-ground section of London's underground metropolitan line, and the train noise would have been deafening for the occupants of 10 Rillington Place. After 3 years working as a foreman at the Commoner Cinema in King Street at the beginning of the Second World War, Christie applied to join the War Reserve Police and was accepted. The authorities failed to check for the existence of a criminal record. He was assigned to the Harrow Road Police Station, where he met a woman named Gladys Jones, with whom he began an affair. Their relationship lasted until mid-1943, when the woman's husband, a serving soldier, returned from the war. After learning of the affair, he went to the house where his wife was living, discovered Christie there, and beat him up. The first person Christie admitted to killing was Ruth First, a 21-year-old Austrian munitions worker who supplemented her income by occasionally engaging in prostitution. Christie claimed to have met First while she was soliciting clients in a snack bar on Ladbroke Grove. According to his own statements, on August 24, 1943, he invited First into his home to have sex with her, while his wife was visiting relatives at the time. Afterward, he impulsively strangled her on his bed with a length of rope. He initially stowed her body beneath the floorboards of his living room, then buried it in the back garden the following evening. Soon after the murder, at the end of 1943, he resigned as a special police constable. The following year, he found new employment as a clerk at an Acton radio factory. There, he met his second victim, colleague Muriel Amelia Eady. On October 7, 1944, he invited Eady back to his flat with the promise that he had concocted a special mixture that could cure her bronchitis. Eady was supposed to inhale the mixture from a jar with a tube inserted at the top. The mixture was in Friar's Balsam, and Friar's Balsam is like an adhesive that they put underneath the bandages to make sure they stick to the skin. The mixture that Christie used to disguise the smell of domestic gas. Once Eady was seated, breathing the mixture from the tube with her back turned, Christie inserted a second tube into the jar connected to a gas tap. As Eady continued breathing, she inhaled the domestic gas, which soon rendered her unconscious. Domestic gas during the 1940s was coal gas, which had a carbon monoxide content of 15%. Christie then raped and strangled Eady before burying her alongside First. During the Easter of 1948, Timothy Evans and his wife Beryl moved into the top floor flat of 10 Rillington Place, where Beryl gave birth that October to their daughter Geraldine. In late 1949, Evans informed police that his wife was dead. A police search of the building failed to find her body, but a later search revealed the bodies of Beryl, Geraldine, and a 16-week male fetus in an outdoor wash house. Beryl's body had been wrapped twice in a blanket and then a tablecloth. The post-mortem revealed that both the mother and daughter had been strangled, and that Beryl had been physically assaulted before her death, shown by facial bruising. Evans at first claimed that Christie had killed his wife in a botched abortion operation, but police questioning eventually produced a confession. The alleged confession may have been fabricated by the police, as the statement appeared artificial. After being charged, Evans withdrew his confession and once again accused Christie, this time of both murders. On January 11, 1950, Evans was put on trial for the murder of his daughter, the prosecution having not decided to pursue a second charge of murder with his wife. Christie was a principal witness for the Crown. He denied Evans' accusations and gave detailed evidence about the quarrels between him and his wife. The jury found Evans guilty despite the revelation of Christie's criminal record of theft and violence. Evans was originally due to be hanged on January 31st, but appealed. After his appeal on February 20th had failed, Evans was hanged at HM Prison Pentonville on March 9th, 1950. Police made several mistakes in their handling of the Evans case, especially in overlooking the remains of Christie's previous murder victims in the garden at 10 Rillington Place. One femur was later found propping up a fence. The garden at the property was very small, about 16 by 14 feet, and the fence was parallel to the wash house where the bodies of Beryl and Geraldine were later found. Several searches were made at the house after Evans confessed to placing his wife's remains in the drains, but the police conducting the interview did not go into the wash house. The garden was apparently examined but not excavated at this point. Christie later admitted that his dog had unearthed Edie's skull in the garden shortly after these police searches. He threw the skull into an abandoned bombed-out house on nearby St. Mark's Road. There was clearly no search made of the crime scene in which this or other human remains would have been found and pointed to Christie as a perpetrator. Several police searches of the property showed a complete lack of expertise in handling forensic evidence and were superficial at best. The evidence of builders working at Rillington Place was ignored, and their interviews with Evans suggest that the police concocted a false confession. It should have been clear from the first statement made by Evans on November 30th, 1949, that he didn't know where his wife's body was and how she had been killed. He claimed that his wife's body was either in the manhole or in the drain in front of the house, but a police search failed to find remains there. That should have prompted a thorough search of the residence, wash house, and garden, but no further action was taken until later when the two bodies were found in the wash house. Evans was also unaware at the first interview that his daughter had even been killed. Police accepted all of Christie's statements as true without major scrutiny, and he was a crucial witness in the trial of Evans. As Kennedy wrote, the police accept Christie, a former War Reserve policeman, as one of their own, largely taking what he said at face value without any further investigation. Bearing in mind, Christie had criminal convictions for theft and malicious wounding, while Evans had no violence convictions. The reliance on his testimony was questionable. It is significant that Christie had claimed to be an abortionist prior to him meeting the Evanses. Nearly 3 years had passed without a major incident for Christie after Evans' trial. At the same time, new tenants arrived to fill the vacant first and second floors of 10 Rillington Place. The tenants were predominantly migrants from the West Indies. This horrified Christie and his wife, who both were racist towards their neighbors and disliked living with them. Christie negotiated with the Poor Man's Law Center to continue to have exclusive use of the back garden, probably to have space between him and his neighbors, but quite possibly to prevent anyone from uncovering the human remains buried there. On the morning of December 14th, 1952, Christie strangled his wife in bed. She had last been seen in public 2 days earlier. He invented several stories to explain his wife's disappearance. In a reply to a letter from relatives in Sheffield, he wrote that Ethel had rheumatism and could not write herself. To another neighbor, he explained that she was visiting her relatives in Sheffield. To another, it said that she had gone to Birmingham. Christie had resigned from his job on December 6th and had been unemployed since then. To support himself, he sold her wedding ring and watch on December 17th for £2 10 shillings, and the furniture on January 8th, for which he received £11. He kept cutlery, 2 chairs, a mattress, and his kitchen table. From January 23rd to March 20th, he received his weekly unemployment benefit of £3 12 shillings. On January 26, 1953, Christie forged his wife's signature and emptied her bank account. On February 27th, he sold some of his wife's clothing for £3 5 shillings. He also received a check for £8 on March 7th from the Bradford Clothing and Supply Company. Between January 19th and March 6, 1953, Christie murdered 3 more women he invited back to 10 Rillington Place: Kathleen Maloney, Rita Nelson, and Hectorina McLennan. Maloney was a prostitute from the Ladbroke Grove area. Nelson was from Belfast and visiting her sister in Ladbroke Grove. She was 6 months pregnant at the time she encountered Christie. Christie first met McLennan, who was living in London with her boyfriend Alex Baker, in a cafe. All 3 met on several occasions after this, and Christie let McLennan and Baker stay at 10 Rillington Place while they were looking for accommodation. On another occasion, Christie met McLennan on her own and persuaded her to come back to his flat, where he murdered her. Later, he convinced Baker, who came to Rillington Place looking for McLennan, that he hadn't seen her. He kept up this lie for several days, meeting Baker regularly to see if he had news on McLennan's whereabouts and to help him search for her. Yo, you are crazy. For the murders of his final 3 victims, he modified the gassing technique. he had first used on Edie. He used a rubber clip connected to the gas pipe in the kitchen, which he kept closed off with a bulldog clip. He seated his victims in the kitchen, released the clip on the tube, and let gas leak into the room. It was established that all 3 victims had been exposed to carbon monoxide. The gas made his victims drowsy, for which Christie strangled them with a length of rope. As with Edie, Christie repeatedly raped his 3 victims while they were unconscious and continued to do so as they died. When this aspect of his crimes was publicly revealed, Christie quickly gained a reputation of being a necrophiliac. After Chris had murdered each of his final 3 victims by ligature strangulation, he placed a vest between their legs before wrapping their half-naked bodies in blankets before stowing their bodies in a small alcove behind the back kitchen wall. He later covered this entrance to the alcove with wallpaper. Christie moved to the 10 Rillington Place on March 20th, 1953, after fraudulently renting his flat to a couple for whom he took £7 13 shillings. The landlord visited the same evening and, finding the couple there instead of Christie, demanded that they leave first thing in the morning. The landlord allowed the tenant of the top door flat, Befferus Brown, to use Christie's kitchen. On March 24th, Brown discovered the kitchen alcove when he attempted to insert brackets into the wall to hold a wireless set. Peeling back the wallpaper, Brown saw the bodies of Maloney, Nelson, and McLennan. He informed the police, and a citywide search for Christie began. After leaving 10 Rillington Place, Christie had gone to a Roten house in King's Cross and booked a room for 7 nights under his real name and address. He stayed for only 4 nights, leaving on March 24th when news broke of the discovery at his flat. Christie wandered around London, slept rough, and spent much of the day in cafes and cinemas. On March 24th, he pawned his watch at Battersea for 10 shillings. On the morning of March 31st, he was arrested at the embankment near Putney Bridge after being challenged about his identity by a police officer. When the police searched Christie, they discovered an old newspaper clipping about the remand of Timothy Evans among the personal items on him. Christie initially admitted only to the murders of the women in the alcove and of his wife during police questioning. When informed of the skeletons buried in the back garden, he admitted to those as well. On April 27, 1953, he confessed to the murder of Beryl Evans, which Timothy Evans had originally been charged with during the police investigation in 1949, although for the most part he denied killing Geraldine. On June 5, 1953, Christie confessed to the murders of Edie and First, which helped police identify their skeletons. Christie was tried only for the murder of his wife Ethel. His trial began on June 22, 1953, in the same court in which Evans had been tried 3 years earlier. He pleaded insanity, with his defense describing him as mad as a March hare, and claimed to have poor memory of the events. A doctor at HM Prison Brixton who evaluated Christie was called as a witness by the prosecution. He testified, using medical terminology at the time, that Christie had a hysterical personality but was not insane. The jury rejected his plea, and after deliberating for 85 minutes found him guilty, and he was sentenced to death. Christie was hung at 9 o'clock in the morning on July 15, 1953 at HM Prison Pentonville. His executioner was Albert Pierrepoint, who had hanged Evans. After being restrained for execution, Christie complained that his nose itched. Pierrepoint assured him that it won't bother you for long. Ooh, and that is the story of John Christie, the monster at Rillington Place. It's ridiculous how an innocent man died, and he played a part in an innocent man dying. That is unbelievably sick. Like, he testified at his trial and got another innocent man killed for his crimes. That's ridiculous. But thank you for the support. I really appreciate you. Hope you liked this video. Hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, leave a like. Hit that subscribe button if you're new to the channel. Also, check out my post notifications if you haven't already. But please be safe. Stay on the grind. Have a great day. I'm out. Peace.